Hi, everyone. We are here with Dr. Krista Gonzalez. Very excited to have you here, Doc. So, welcome to Salud Sisterhood.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, we asked our community what topics are they interested of learning about, and Dr. Krista Gonzalez, she's an endocrinologist and obesity specialist. And today we'll be talking about GLP-1s, a hot topic that has been on everybody's social media feeds, has been also on a bunch of headlines in the news. And what better person to talk about this than an expert? So thank you for joining us and granting us with the gift of knowledge today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We endocrinologists have been excited about this topic before it was trendy.
Well, there you go.
So, very exciting to always talk about GLP-1 medications in the class.
Amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So, for anyone new to this topic, what are GLP-1 medications and what do they do in the body? Just so that we can level set things.
Yeah, good question. So our it's a hormone that actually is naturally in our bodies. However, it's broken down very quickly by our bodies naturally. So what these pharmaceutical companies did was they developed a molecule that can last longer, right? So that we don't break it down so quickly. Also, there's different diseases that, you have deficiency or the breakdown's faster. So these medications were originally developed for the treatment of diabetes because they do help you utilize, the insulin that you naturally make. They increase your insulin sensitivity more. So they saw, also the advantage of weight reduction, which is actually really hard in this population. Insulin resistance and diabetes just makes it challenging for people to lose weight or manage their weight. So it was, seen and it's just been developed even further. So that's one way, right? Insulin sensitization. Another way that it works as far as the weight reduction is it actually slows the rate at which your stomach empties the food out. So you feel fuller faster
Mhm.
and you don't get as hungry. Now, the last piece that, they finally realized after, years of use, and this class is not new. It's been FDA approved since 2005. It's just that it got, FDA approved for weight reduction recently, 2021, and 2022 for the two big medications, Wegovy and Zepbound, that are out there. But it also was found to be active. These receptors are in the brain. So it had the advantage of silencing like food noise or cravings for food. Other things that people have seen anecdotally, I've been told they don't want alcohol. There's also been changes in online shopping, right? As well as like addictive behaviors. Food's very closely tied to the pleasure center in the brain. And so a lot of, indications that have come about since then and more down the pipeline.
That's awesome. I mean, I'll share something personal here. I actually have been on a GLP-1 for 7 months now, and everything you described like hits home. Like I have PCOS, so it's something that I've been struggling with for forever. And when I was younger, they were just like, oh, it's just irregular period. So that's how, I got diagnosed. And so they put me on birth control, but they did warn me, hey, you may have issues like, you know, conceiving and having babies later on, but we'll deal with that later. So thankfully I didn't have any issues conceiving. I had my two babies, but after pregnancies, my first one was healthy, the second one was healthy too, but I also had gestational diabetes. And then after having the baby, I then had a lot of issues trying to like bring down the weight. And so after, doing all the right things of eating healthy, exercising, like being on diets and all this stuff, like the weight wouldn't come off. And this year I was like, well, I need to figure out what's happening. And insulin resistance was something that came out in my blood work. And the doctor that I'm seeing, he recommended I start a GLP-1, and I did, and it's been life-changing, really. Like, the food noise is gone, and we'll talk about that later. The alcohol, like, wine nights are not the same anymore. Like, I'm just like, "Yeah, I'll just have a glass." I just don't, I'm not really like I do enjoy it because I like the taste of wine, but it's not like I need a glass of wine every night after work or whatever. So everything you say, resonates, and it makes a lot of sense. As it relates to midlife, why does weight management feel harder after 40, especially for women who are eating well and exercising like I was or I am?
Good question. So it's a busy time in our lives, right? A lot of us have, kids by 40 and a lot to juggle career wise. And unfortunately, sometimes, sleep goes by the wayside. And they did a study actually showing that people that did diet and exercise, 2 populations exactly the same. However, one was sleep deprived and one was sleeping the recommended 7 to 9 hours per night. And the group that was sleeping lost 55% more fat than the group that was sleep deprived. So one, again, timing in our busy, busy lives, but also menopause, right? Disrupts our sleep tremendously. You may know that progesterone, whenever it's declining early in perimenopause, can lead to increased anxiety, insomnia, and then eventually we get deficient in estrogen as well. And that leads to hot flashes and vasomotor symptoms like that. And that just makes it really impossible to get a good night's rest, or if you wake up in the middle of the night, to fall back asleep. So, sleep is so underrated. It's so important, not only for our metabolism, not only for the example I mentioned in weight management, but also it affects the foods we choose to eat, or our brain chooses for us in some cases. If you're sleep deprived, you're going to go towards those comfort foods, towards salts and sweets and anything to boost our energy, right? So, yeah, unfortunately, sleep really is one of the core things that we need, even though we try to convince ourselves we don't need it. So, yeah, the menopause transition makes sleep really, really challenging. And also, the change in estrogen, our body composition changes over time. We are losing muscle faster after 40. Starting in our mid 30s, that starts to escalate, but after 40 for women really starts to escalate. So that change in body composition, that muscle loss, Dr. Wanda Wright, she's a longevity expert. Puts it perfectly. A muscle is nature's Spanx. And so, unfortunately, we start to see that the fat collects in the midsection. And as doctors, we get particularly concerned about visceral adiposity, or, belly fat, because it's the one that causes diseases. It worsens the cycle of insulin resistance, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and it just makes it harder and harder to lose weight.
Yeah, so the booty fat is not the same as the stomach fat.
Yeah.
And how do um you already explained how this affects metabolism, but does it also affect insulin sensitivity?
Yeah. So, whenever the belly fat increases, it's a very active endocrine organ, right? Those adipose cells, or the adipocytes, or those fat cells, they're really active. They increase inflammation. They also are less sensitive to the insulin that we naturally make compared to muscle. So our body doesn't utilize the insulin that we're making as well. So yeah, it worsens insulin resistance.
Interesting. And when it comes to obesity, why do people have it so wrong? It's not about willpower, is it? I mean, everybody thinks like, "Oh, I just don't have the willpower to stop eating sweets or to not eat those fries," but it's really more than just willpower, right?
Way more. We've been culturally just ingrained to think that's what it was, because we were honestly ignorant. We didn't know how much was involved in it. We just didn't investigate it enough, right? And so yeah, it's very, very multifactorial. There's the genetic component, there's epigenetics, there's neurobehavioral. We know the brain is far more involved than we even thought. It's not just the willpower, the consciousness. It's also like, the fact that the food, we live in a world of ultra processed foods and sedentary lifestyles. The ultra processed food just bypasses our better judgment. It makes it so that we don't even realize how much we're consuming, and we continue to consume like high sugary foods without it brings out less of the executive function in us. It just completely bypasses that. It's really designed, the food that we've designed, to unfortunately bypass our good judgment. So yeah, it can be addictive as well. Again, I mentioned sedentary lifestyle. We're not really designed as humans to be in front of a computer all day or screens. We're designed to be outside, moving around. And so our lifestyles have very profoundly impacted that. Uh, our devices, they go off all the time. There's always something. I can't even tell you how many WhatsApp chats go off like all the time, especially as a busy mom, and that raises our baseline cortisol. Now, I don't wanna go into the trendy, supplements that are out there for reducing your cortisol naturally. I don't believe in that, but I do believe in getting out of our brains a bit into our bodies and helping calm our cortisol levels a bit naturally, like through meditation, through turning off some of those notifications, through having screen-free time. So the society we live in is just really against us. There's also what they call fog eating, where, you bypass how much food you consume because you're distracted by your device. So practicing mindful eating is really important. And also the medications that we take. Like if you're on steroids for a cold, or say you're on steroids for asthma, you need to breathe, right? Or joint injections or back injections. I always tell people, figure out what's in your injection, like what's being injected into your body. Because if steroids are involved, it's also going to worsen insulin resistance. It could put somebody from prediabetes into diabetes. It's really going to just challenge your system. So medications, there's many, many other medications that can promote weight gain, as well as, that conversion over from prediabetes to diabetes or promote insulin resistance. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, how are we expected to go against all of these factors that are working against us? So it's very multifactorial. It's not only about willpower. There's a lot involved.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand that. And I mean, like you said, we've been raised to think that, if you're gordita, you don't have the willpower, you're just eating a lot. And like, look how much she eats. She's una flaca. But it's really our brains, from what you're explaining, like our brains are wired in a way where they're sending signals where like it's asking you literally to like eat certain foods, or and that takes me to something that a lot of us who are on GLP-1s describe, of one of the first things that comes into play or starts happening when we start the medication, and it's called food noise. Can you explain what food noise is for those people who are not on GLP-1s or who don't know what that term means?
Yeah, so food noise is kind of the invasive thoughts of food. Cravings, it's beyond that. It's like planning, right? So culturally, we've also grown up in a society that promotes dieting, right? And with that, it can cause a little bit of pathologic thinking around food. So you're like thinking, I just ate that. Oh, now I can't eat this later on. Or I'm planning my next meal. Or I'm already thinking about this food that I just saw on commercial, which can be very triggering for people as well. Like food from ads and scenes like that. It's just the incessant thought of food, how it's affecting you all day. And I've heard people say that it feels so empowering when that's gone, because it's taking up so much emotional bandwidth, so much cerebral space, right? Like what a waste of our brain space. So it takes that off, and it allows you to be emotionally a bit more available for yourself, for your family. Think of other things. It's very freeing, is what I've heard from a lot of my patients.
Yeah, I mean, and if you work in an office, forget about it. Like
Yeah,
people
no.
taking like donuts or cookies or like leftovers. And even if you already had lunch, you're like, oh, that looks good. Like, you just grab a little bit. And I feel that having been on this medication, like all that wanting or thinking and all that is gone. Like it's mind blowing how much is you notice it like on the first week that food noise is gone, and you eat, you sit down, you have your lunch or your breakfast, and that's it. Like you don't think about food anymore. And that has been really life changing for me. Really, really. Um, and so how does a GLP-1, like whether it's Mounjaro, Zepbound, Ozempic, Wegovy, how do they affect food noise?
Yeah, so they dampen it, they blunt it, and like you said, it can be very a dramatic shift for a lot of people from the beginning. So there's the GLP-1 medications, right? There's like Ozempic, Wegovy, and then there's the GIP GLP-1 medications like Mounjaro and Zepbound. And they are different, but I have heard, across the board that they help blunt it again because we have these receptors in our brain and it's so closely tied to our pleasure centers.
Yeah. And so once you start a GLP-1, let's say you have a new patient, what changes do, aside from food noise, can patients expect to have when they start a GLP?
Positive or negative?
Both. Let's talk
Okay.
about both because I think people want to know.
Yeah. So I always want to counsel people beforehand. Hydration is really important because it's something that we kind of neglect to begin with, right? And then put you on a medication that really just you don't want to eat or drink or like it just doesn't cross your brain. So yeah, so hydration is really important. It helps with the nausea. So nausea is a side effect. Diarrhea, constipation, a lot of predominantly GI related side effects is what I hear the most and what is seen in the studies as well are the most
Is this
common.
because it slows down the
Yeah, good
digestion process?
question, good question. So
Okay.
it's multifactorial. Part of it is the effect on the brain, and the other part is the fact that, yes, it slows digestion, it slows the rate at which the stomach empties the food. It can worsen reflux, for example, because that's already an issue. So yeah, multifactorial and as far as how it works. Other common side effects I hear are injection site reactions as well as hair loss down the road. Hair loss down the road is interesting. So that can happen like 3 to 4 months in. And anybody that's had a baby knows that the body, one, childbirth is like stressful. So that's an inciting event to the body. And we have hair loss, you know, 3 to 6 months down the road. But also weight reduction, the body does see that as a kind of like a stressor,
Stressor.
and yeah, and so there is hair loss that can happen. Also, sometimes maybe you're not eating enough protein or enough calories or micronutrients that you're taking in, so many, many different factors. Maybe even you're, like, on thyroid medication and you lose weight, and it's a weight-based medication, and then you're taking too much.
Right.
So, yeah, it's very different for everybody. That's why you really need somebody that's an expert helping you in this because there's so many factors that it can be. But yeah, so hair loss is very common. Some people say dizziness. And again, hydration is important.
How much
Or
water should people be drinking, if they're taking a GLP-1? Is
yeah, good question. That's a good question. Yeah, so standard rule is like 64 ounces and plus, in addition to the exercise that you're taking. But again, really prioritizing at least baseline hydration is just so important because like your thirst is not the same, right? You're not, it could be easily ignored and bypassed. So you really want to listen to your body, but you also want to like even plan it ahead. Kind of like how some people plan meals so that they're not, like, starving and then overindulge. Same thing. You wanna really, really plan this, and you also wanna break up those traditional 3 meals a day into smaller, more frequent meals in order to be able to get adequate protein in. So, a lot of GI side effects, we mentioned injection site reactions, hair loss, other things that are frequently mentioned, I talked about alcohol. Anhedonia can occur, feeling of, like, blah.
okay.
Fatigue can happen. All of these things are, again, multifactorial. Fatigue, is it micronutrient deficiency? Is it the medication? Do we need to go down on the dose? So, yeah, those are that's the negative component, right? Also, whenever somebody's on like a weight loss journey, we want to make sure you're not losing weight too quickly. Why? We want to save muscle. We don't want you to yo-yo diet like you may have in the past because every time you drop your weight, your muscle and the fat go down. We want to save that muscle because if you gain weight back, you're only gaining the fat component back, right? And then you end up actually unhealthier than when you started. Or also, like, say you go off the diet or off the medication, you're less likely to have as much rebound weight gain if you've maintained your muscle mass. So that's really important. Typically, we recommend like 0.5 to 1% weight reduction per week as a conservative rate of weight loss to help save that muscle. Protein prioritization, strength training twice a week in minimum is also really important. So we want to, also not lose weight too quickly. We have our hypo responders, our hyper responders. We adjust the dose customized to the individual. The other thing that can happen is on a positive level, right? We talked about alcohol reduction. We talked about opening up emotional and brain bandwidth, but also inflammation. Like I hear, people all the time, even if they haven't had a significant amount of weight reduction, they feel better. They can move. They're a little bit more motivated to move. So a lot of positive things. I had already even mentioned like the weight reduction can potentially cause blood pressure reduction. There's studies that show triglyceride reduction, like really powerful triglyceride reduction, in addition to blood pressure. These medications are not indicated as like blood pressure reducers. I don't want to mislead anybody, but that can happen with a significant amount of weight reduction.
Yeah, both my brother and my mom are also on GLP-1s. They both had high blood pressure. They've been on medication for years. And my mom, for the first time in years, is off of them because her blood pressure dropped too much. I mean, and she's been really good about like following all the rules, like, exercising, eating her protein. And we've kind of been on this journey together. So it's been really fun to like get healthy together. We go to the gym together, like a new activity that we do. And my brother also, not a 40-year-old woman, but he's a man in his like late 30s, and he also got his blood pressure medication dosage lowered. So that's definitely something that on the personal side we've witnessed firsthand. Yeah. It's incredible how much weight affects so many different aspects of health.
No, it's like I said, it's a very active endocrine organ. The inflammation component is really powerful. And like other medications, I feel like it kind of, doesn't need to be said, but medications that control your blood sugar can be reduced potentially as well. Because this medication helps with insulin sensitization. And again, was it originally designed initially when they started out for diabetes, but really powerful.
And then who should not take GLP-1 medication? And then on the other side of that question is who should consider taking it that perhaps hasn't, been prescribed it or have had the discussion with their doctor?
Yeah, good question. So the contraindications, there is a theoretical risk of worsening medullary thyroid cancer that was seen in rat studies, not human studies. And so anybody with a history, personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer or MEN type 2, because of that increased risk, we do not prescribe these medications. Now, so based off of that black box warning, I always get asked, well, by even providers, well, they had papillary thyroid cancer, so just in case. No, that doesn't apply. Like papillary, follicular, anaplastic, any other type of thyroid cancer does not apply. Again, this is a theoretical risk for medullary. It doesn't apply to all thyroid cancer types. However, the contraindication currently is we don't recommend it for people with a personal or family history of that. Um, a history of pancreatitis, if it's a non-reversible cause, that's currently, on the prescribing information, a contraindication as well. And people with severe gastroparesis, this was not studied, and that's basically what's widely known as gut paralysis. I hate that term, but just that's people like know what it is based off of that. It's basically your stomach is emptying the food out too slowly. So this medication, as I mentioned, slows that even further. So it wasn't studied in people with severe gastroparesis, so we don't recommend it for that population. It could potentially worsen that. But those are the big contraindications for these medications. Now, we currently have guidelines that I feel like are really insurance driven um, and not completely inclusive. The current guidelines show that these medications are meant for people with a BMI 27 or greater and weight related comorbidities. We'll go into that. And for 30 or greater. What's a weight related comorbidity? Hypertension, high cholesterol, PCOS, prediabetes, osteoarthritis of weight bearing joints. The list is long. Obstructive sleep apnea. I don't know if I mentioned that. Uh, so that's currently what the guidelines say that, we can how we can treat individuals, but I feel like we neglect also like ethnicities with different needs. So for example, Southeast Asians, they should be treated at lower BMIs than those traditional guidelines because of their higher risk of diabetes. So again, a lot of variability, but currently most insurance companies will only approve it for that. So those are the people that should avoid it and the people that it's really designed for in our current landscape. Now, people that maybe don't, there's no indication for PCOS right now,
I
but
know.
it's very helpful
I
in the
know.
PCOS
Trust me, I
population.
try to get it approved. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have high triglycerides, but I did hit a few other markers and my insurance wouldn't cover it. So it's been a wonderful but very expensive journey.
Yeah, and thankfully there's been some cost reductions for cash
Yeah.
pay, but still it's still very expensive and cost prohibitive for
You
so
would
many.
think, yeah, you would think that because it's getting you healthier, that insurance would be willing to cover it because the cost in the long term would be less because you're going to have a healthier person that's paying for insurance. That won't you be using it as much? I don't know.
Yeah, there's been a lot of cost analysis that's been done, and I'm hoping that there's more studies in the future to come out to just have that overwhelming amount of evidence. But honestly, the cost needs to go down. It's too expensive, especially compared to other countries like in Europe, for example. It's way cheaper.
Yeah, or Latin America too.
Yeah. Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
So, and then, as it pertains to muscle, you already mentioned that it comes with muscle loss. Like, what's the reality here? Can we talk a little bit more? You mentioned strength training. Like, why does a muscle have such a deep impact on the overall health? Like, what role does a muscle play as it pertains to our, endocrine system, as it pertains to our overall well-being?
Yeah, muscle's so important. So it helps with insulin sensitization. It utilizes glucose faster. It uses the sugar that we eat faster than fat does. So for weight regulation purposes, right? Really important. Also, sugar in excess is inflammatory to the cells. Diabetes is such a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. That muscle is very important for, insulin sensitivity and avoiding insulin resistance, but also it's really important also in that it affects how our weight is distributed. So, if we have more muscle, we have less fat building up at the center, which I said is very inflammatory and causes multiple diseases. Also our function, right? If our muscle's weak and we fall, and say we're at an older age where our bones have had the opportunity to become less dense because that muscle is weaker, then we have a higher morbidity rate, a higher mortality rate from like a hip fracture or of getting a hip fracture. If our reflexes, because the muscles go unused, are slower, we're not going to catch ourselves when we trip over something as easily. So it's extremely important for quality of life, as well as I mentioned, hip fractures, for example.
Yeah,
So
like
our bones,
overall bone health, right?
yeah, yeah. The stronger our muscles are, the stronger our bones are. And that's why weight bearing is so important. Why, resistance training is so, so important to help.
So, like, to all the girls doing Pilates and yoga, like, that's great too, but they also need to lift some heavy weights, right?
Yeah. So you saw the same person. We had the opportunity of meeting at a One Tribe event on hormonal health. And Dr. Vonda Wright put it so wonderfully. That's the sprinkle on top in her latest book of exercise, right? It's very helpful and balance in maintaining flexibility, which are still important in our function, in our movement. But it should not be the only type of exercise that we do.
It can complement the
Yes.
strength training. Yes. And then you can't talk about muscle without talking about protein. So, how much protein should we be consuming? We
Yeah.
talked
So the
about
current
water, hydration.
recommendations.
Now, what is the protein recommendation?
Yeah, if you're on a GLP-1 medication, I lean towards the higher part of this range, but 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram per day. And so starting off the day for longevity purposes at like 30 grams of protein is very helpful to get you on the right track. So that's easily achieved by a scoop of protein in your oatmeal or your smoothie, or a supplement is very, very helpful in achieving that. It's harder to achieve your protein goals when you're on a GLP-1 medication, as you know, because you get fuller faster. So supplementation is almost unavoidable for a lot of people on
Right.
GLP-1 medications.
Kind of like what I've been doing is like around 30 to 35 grams of protein per meal. And I mean, and then you supplement a little bit more, whether with a protein shake or whatnot. But like that has helped me maintain within my weight loss journey, has helped me keep muscle. I've lost some muscle, but nothing in comparison to the fat portion because I've been really, really good about going to the gym and eating my protein, like hitting my protein target. So that's kind of like the rule of thumb that I've been using for my diet.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, like this is not unique to these medications. This is
No, we should be eating like this, right?
well, the muscle loss component, This is with any diet. If you're losing weight quickly, you're gonna lose muscle. They had these studies done. They did a DEXA sub-study analysis where they compared, like Zepbound pooled group versus placebo, and the placebo group also lost muscle. Just like the Zepbound pooled group lost muscle. It's whenever we lose weight, we have that, chance of losing muscle.
'Cause you could be skinny and obese, like, right? Isn't there a term
Yeah, I
for
love that
skinny
you brought
fat?
that up. So I was trying to bring that up earlier and I didn't complete that. Yes, I feel like women in particular probably suffer more from this than men, and it's just so undetected, especially after having a baby. Like we lose weight really quickly, right? A lot of weight potentially really quickly through the breastfeeding process or, just not caring anymore and
Little
all.
human.
Yeah. Um, so with that dramatic weight loss, we have that opportunity, unfortunately, of losing a lot of muscle there. Even if we bounce back, we might not have bounced back to the same body composition. Maybe we bounce back to the same number on the scale, which I hate the concept of bouncing back, by the way, but that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, we might have lost so much muscle during that period, that postpartum period, so to the point where maybe our total body percent fat is 35% or greater. And then, yes, technically we have like sarcopenia, muscle loss, and sarcopenic obesity is what it's called. So yeah, you could still look then, not, how your body composition is not optimized.
Be thin but not healthy. And I mean, you probably see this with your patients a lot. Why is there so much stigma around using GLP-1s? Like people like often call it cheating. And I know it's like I mean, I'm very transparent and outspoken about it. Like if somebody asks me, I'm like, yeah, it's been, it's like a tool in my toolkit for me to be healthy. Just how people that have high blood pressure use high blood pressure medication and nobody gets shamed for that or people with diabetes. But why do you think that as a society we are, I think it's getting a little better, but why has this been so stigmatized? The
Yeah, no, I
usage
love
of
that
GLP-1s.
question. Yeah, no, and I love the way you think about it too, because I feel like how it should be. It is a tool in your toolkit, and why not use all the tools available to you? But because obesity so long was tied with, quote, laziness or lack of willpower, people think of it as cheating, which I hate, or as like a band aid. But it's not. It's a chronic disease that's multifactorial. It's harder to treat than, blood pressure. It's harder to treat than diabetes in itself. There's so much more involved. So, yeah, unfortunately, just societal norms have stigmatized obesity in general, and now they're unfortunately looking at this as like a cheater's way out, which it's not. You're actually smarter for using all the tools available to you.
Right? Yeah, just how you would go to the gym. It's another tool that you're using for your health. And then, you know, why is it that people can't just stop? Like once you're on a treatment and like you can't just stop using GLP-1s, like you need to taper it down, work with your doctor. Like that's why it's so important to do it with like a medical professional that is an expert in GLP-1s because not every doctor knows how to prescribe this medication and they may be prescribing it because I don't know, they may be making money or whatnot, but like why is it so important for people to do it with a specialist, somebody that understands obesity, somebody that has been using this kind of medication for a few years? Because you can't just stop the medication, right?
Yeah, so good question. So you can't just stop you can stop the medication in the sense that you won't go through a withdrawal, right? Like they're like for benzos or alcohol, you go through a withdrawal stage where your body physically needed it and you could actually seize if you were, taking those substances long enough. This doesn't have that, alarming effect. So you don't actually go through a withdrawal, but you are taking a chemical out of you're taking something out of your body that you had as a tool. And will the food noise come back? Yeah. I mean, will the weight come back? Of course it can. There's been studies that have shown that, after a certain lead-in period, you can get rebound weight gain. So it is important to go into maintenance with somebody. It's also important to customize things per, your personal preference. Maintenance looks very different for everybody. Some people can maintain on a different oral medication that's non GLP-1. Some people can maintain on the lowest dose of GLP-1. Some people maintain on max dose of a GLP-1 medication. So maintenance is so variable for so many. It's not a one size fits all recipe. That's why an expert really is needed. And I would say to seek out an expert, you can go to abom.org and you get obesity medicine certified list and you can search locally for, somebody in your area. But in order to be successful with this medication, right, and not end up unhealthier than when you started, I really recommend seeking out an expert opinion because I have seen people not knowing titrate these medications up too quickly. You get horrible side effects. You can end up hospitalized because of dehydration, just, horrible nausea, vomiting that can happen. Or maybe they titrate up the medication too quickly and you lose weight too quickly and you lose a ton of muscle with it. So, a lot of reasons to seek out an expert.
I follow Dr. Rocio Salas Whalen, who's been like very outspoken and educating everyone on GLP-1s on social media. And I loved how she positioned this. Like the road to GLP-1s is a GPS. It's GLP-1, protein, and strength training. And so that's really like when what she says is that when doctors prescribe a GLP-1, like it doesn't go without these other two. And that, you need to educate your patients as to why you need to do these other two in order to do the treatment right. Because it's not just doing the medication and letting the medication do its thing. You need to do your part too, because it's an overall lifestyle change. It's not just like popping a pill and like, okay, that's it, I'm done, I'm going to continue on my day. It's really like a lifestyle change. So that stuck, the GPS, like that was good for me to remember. And then lately, there's been a lot of research coming out on GLP-1s. What is the latest research say about long-term health effects of GLP-1s?
Okay, so this question's loaded. So, first of all, we have long-term health data, right? So like I said, these medications were first designed for diabetes and FDA approved since 2005. So we have 20 years of data. We have all of the long-term, this is not something that just happened in the last 4 years. It's just something that became popular in the last 4 years. But we have a lot of data. There's multiple trials that show improvements in other things. For example, the SELECT trial showed decreased risk of cardiovascular disease. The FLOW trial showed decreased risk of kidney progression in people with diabetes. There's studies that show disease resolution with obstructive sleep apnea. It's really a good time to be an endocrinologist because this is a new tool that was not available, new-ish, right? 20 years. Tool that was not available prior. And the research just keeps coming out showing so many benefits. Now, there's drawbacks too. Like I'm terrified for the people that aren't prioritizing protein and strength training, you know, but that's not how we recommend taking it.
Right, right. And then going back to the PCOS conversation really quick, because we had a question from the community. Are GLP-1s appropriate for women with PCOS?
Yeah, they're not FDA like indicated. Like I said, you may have trouble getting it approved from your insurance. It's a helpful comorbidity to list when trying to apply on the prior authorization, but it's a beautiful tool for PCOS because PCOS is a disease of insulin resistance and it helps with insulin sensitization. The recommendation previously, our treatment was weight reduction for PCOS. We know
But
that
you can't
helps
lose
with
weight with
regulating
insulin resistance.
periods. Yeah, what other better way to do it than with, GLP-1 medication? So yeah, it's a beautiful design for that particular disease.
It's such oxymoron thing to recommend. Like, oh, you just gotta exercise and eat healthy if you have PCOS, but then your PCOS is also causing insulin resistance, which in essence doesn't let you lose
Makes it
weight.
hard.
And
Yeah.
and so yeah, I been there, done that. But thanks for clarifying. And then one last question: if you could leave our community with one message about hormones and health in midlife, what would it be?
Yeah. The hardest thing about this is how much you have to advocate for yourself. and how much research you have to do for yourself. And hopefully that research is from a credible source because the medical community has not caught up with this movement. We lack education in menopause tremendously. We lack education in obesity, in out of residency. So the hardest part is convincing your doctor, unfortunately, and just advocating for yourself and your own health.
Yeah, convincing them or really just
Seeking a
finding.
second opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Finding a because you may have a doctor that you've been going to since, 10, 15, 20 years, but if they're not up to speed with things or if they really just don't understand midlife women's hormones, then it might be time to look for somebody who does, right?
Yeah, and our training is horrible for it. Like it's not designed to treat midlife women, which is unfortunate because we're, half the population.
We're more than half the population. We're
Right,
the
we're more than half the
majority.
Yeah. Uh so one trick that I have seen is, one, looking for somebody that's ABOM certified, but also looking for somebody that's menopause certified. That combination of providers is rare, but it's a very helpful combination to have at your side if you're, a woman suffering from perimenopause and obesity.
And how can they find these doctors?
Yeah, so abom.org is the way you can locate an obesity medicine certified physician. I'm actually not sure if Menopause Society has a database like that, but you could go to, an OBGYN, endocrinologist, and see if they list on their website that certification. Most now, if they have it, are trying to list it because it's very incentivizing to go to a provider that knows about it, more information about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with Salud Sisterhood.
No, my pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.